Cheers for the question, Carwin, all the way from New Zealand. Yeah, there's some good players. I mean, there's obviously a big discrepancy between the Championship and the Premier League. I mean, it's a lot more of a physical league, and I actually think it's a good league for young players to cut the teeth in. I mean, it's a lot better of a league than the academy. I don't really believe in the academy system. I think it's proven at this point now to have failed, and we've lost probably a generation of players. And I think I tweeted not long ago that it is the modern day equivalent of genocide. The fact that whatever these people have put in place, now that they've subsequently decided they've got it completely utter wrong, I actually would argue that this EPPP nonsense that's going about now is exactly what I've just said, nonsense. I don't believe we will see a stimulus in British talent until the education system within the game's better, until we start educating players what it takes, until we start educating coaches what it takes to get the most out of players. I think we're just going to be throwing eggs at a wall, trying to see which ones don't break for a long period of time. And we're starting to see that in the modern day game. I mean, we're fortunate at the minute because we're getting a few eggs sort of through. We're not getting as many as we once did because the Premier League's now demanding that the best players in the world play in it, and the best players in the world aren't the English by abundance. So we've got a global league sitting at the top. I think the Championship's actually a really good league for English players to cut the teeth in. I think it gives them first team experience. One notable young player who sort of springs to mind is the young boy Will Hughes, who was at Derby, who I thought was I think he's 18 or 19. I think he's got a big future, or he certainly could have it. And I think he's in the perfect place. Derby's a big club. He's got a good English coach. I think one of the better, if not the best, English coaches of the last sort of 5-10 years, Steve McLaren, who will no doubt nurture him as a player and as a person. And I think he's going to get a lot of game time, and also he's going to get the pressure of, playing well for Derby and what that takes, without having the sort of financial pressure of a Chelsea, or he's not good enough, we'll go out and buy the best player from Brazil or the best player from Ukraine, which is what the Premier League teams tend to do at the top end. He'll get a lot of time to develop as a player and as a person, and hopefully if more clubs did that with the talent, you would get more kids coming through. I mean, I'm in favour of scrapping the academy system in the probably top tier of English football, because I just think there's no point in it. I mean, why is a manager whose job's going to be on the line, if he's going to lose 5 or 6 games, as we're now probably seeing, with Villa-Boas when he gets a few bad results, David Moyes at the minute who's getting a couple of bad results, why is he ever going to take the time to bed in a young player when he's not going to get the time to bed in as a manager himself, because the results are key to it? So you need to go outside of that. I think we need to give the players similar to what they do with Crew, they develop players and they give players time to develop, and the result isn't the main thing. We have to separate results from player development, and I think whilst them two things are put together, whilst we're still got youth team coaches, or certainly the English fan screaming on for the results on the touchline, and we're not thinking solely about player development, I think we're knackered. I've said before on record, I think we should wipe the slate clean at international level. I think we should send all our better young players to the World Cup, get rid of all the old players that have been to World Cups before. I know there's a sentimental value attached to it, but I can't see England getting out the groups. So you might as well not get out the groups with young up and coming players, throw them in at the deep end, see whether they can sink or swim. No matter what, they'll come on from the experience of it. You might break 1 or 2, but we'll find out, instead of waiting 5 or 6 years. Then they go to a major tournament when they're expected to do really well, and then they break. At least we'll find out at this early stage. So yeah, I mean, the game is, for me, in a bit of a weird situation, and I think we're being propped up at the minute by the fact that the Premier League's so successful. Without the Premier League, the game in this country would be in dire straits. So hopefully it gets sorted, and it gets sorted pretty soon. I don't think it's players earning money. I don't think that's it. There's a lot of other sports where the sportsmen earn a lot more money. It doesn't seem to negate from the product. I actually think it's foreign owners. I think the Premier League's a big problem for the English national team for player development. I think foreign owners are as well, because if you're from Russia, or you're as Abramovich at Chelsea, or you're from, most of the top 5 clubs now are owned by foreign investors. There's no loyalty to the English national team. Why are you ever going to develop players for England when all you care about is developing your club's brand within certain emerging markets, whether it's the market in the country you come from, China, America, Australasia, wherever it may be. Their interest is in making money for their club, and not developing English players. I've actually was discussing with someone whether we find a way of putting some kind of financial stimulus in place for clubs who develop players for the English game, whether the FA can do that, whether it's capable, the FA can financially reward, whether it's the lower league clubs for developing players who go on to play for England at a youth level, whether it's under 18, under 19, under 20, 21 or full side, whether they should put some kind of incentivised package in place for that. Their argument will be the incentive for that is the premium that is then added to an English player in the transfer market. But for me, I don't think that's where it's at. I think we need to get more young English players and more young English coaches coaching in real football. Not this charade of academy, football. This is nonsense. I think it worked better at A and B level when players were exposed to playing against players who were older than them. I actually am massively more in favour for this under 23 league or under 21 league where there's a couple of overage players can play in it. But yeah, until we do something really radical, the game's going to struggle. EPPP, from what I know, and I know very little about it, is more about form filling than player development. And it's no doubt probably been cooked up by a civilian who sits in an office somewhere and thinks this is how I'm going to change world football. You only have to look at the problems within the FA and look at this committee that's going on. This ain't going to solve anything. 12 or 14 heads to solve a problem that one man can probably do if he takes the time and has the foresight to see it. Always ends in tears in my view, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope I get it completely and utterly wrong, but I wouldn't hold any great hope on Greg Dyke and his band of merry men sorting out English football. It's interesting to see what's happening in Scotland at the minute with the young kids who are coming through at Dundee, and that's been all forced about. The fact that more Scottish kids are playing now in the Scottish Premier League than for a while in recent years is the fact that the clubs haven't got the money to pay, either the moderate to bang average foreign players or the players who are coming from England to sort of play there. So what they've got to do, because of the financial restrictions put on them, is develop and play their own players. Hence you're seeing a lot of young emerging talent coming through in the Scottish League, and I think the main thing that'll benefit from that is the Scottish national team. I think their future's a lot more brighter than England's over the next 10, 15, 20 year period, because whilst the Premier League props the English game up, it's worrying times, because there's less and less young English players playing in the top flight and playing at the top clubs, getting exposure to Champions League, getting exposure to Europa League than what has ever happened before. And that says when they come onto a world stage and they pull on the England jersey, they're going to be behind players who are from Germany, from Spain, from Italy, who've had exposure to the major European club competitions. Good question, Adam, in London. I would say you have to be careful how you phrase that question. It would have to be, why do more top English players not play abroad? I think there's a number of English players playing abroad, but a lot of them are playing in English-speaking countries. Hence BT Sport. We've sort of found that out when I was doing the Claire Bolden show. I think you can only benefit from going and playing abroad and seeing different cultures and how they approach it, how they train, their mentality, the way they think about the game was certainly a benefit to me, and I would encourage anybody who thinks is a thinker about football and really cares about the game, to go and play abroad and apply the trade there, whether it's for a year or 6 months or 5 years. I think you can only benefit from seeing a different perspective. Why don't they? It's got to be finance. I think the top players, the Premier League, I know people are saying Germany and Spain. If you look at Germany and Spain, it's not all the clubs. You're looking at Bayern Munich, probably who can afford to compete with Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool. I've just named 4 or 5 English clubs there. Tottenham. You look at Spain, there's only really Real Madrid, Barcelona, possibly Atletico, who can compete financially, but the fact that they sold the 2 best strikers to English clubs in Torres and Aguero, and there's talk of Diego Costa last summer going to Liverpool, says that the English sides are financially a lot more competitive than them. And then where else do you go? AC Milan, Inter Milan, they don't have the financial might they had probably 10 years ago. Roma the same. So there's a limit to where the amount of top players can go, and certainly top English players. If you speak English and you get paid top money to stay within your own country, then why are you going to go where it's difficult? Fair play to Gareth Bale. I think he will become a better player for it eventually. I think, look at Steve McManaman, look at all the top English players who've gone to play abroad, Beckham, they've all become better for it. Not one of them's got worse for going to play abroad. I think they've all improved massively for it. So I think the more top English players that go and play abroad, the better for the national game. I think, the more top English coaches go and coach abroad, the better for the national game. It's interesting to see how many English coaches are coaching in non-English speaking countries in comparison to Spanish coaches coaching in non-Spanish speaking countries, German coaches coaching in non-German coaching countries, and why the Dutch are considered some of the best coaches because they speak the multilingual, they go and coach everywhere. It's not rocket science. The analytics will be there for all to see. The fact that we are not very good globally is we don't really leave these shores. Our coaches learn more from coaches coming in and more from what other emerging nations are doing, or whether more established nations are doing, than what we do from what we're doing. And we're lucky that, as I said before, we've got the finance to do it, because we've got the finance to bring the best coaches in from all around the world. But when that stops, we're in for a really dark period, I feel. I don't really. Jeffinho, that's a great Brazilian name, that. I don't really feel futsal is the answer. I think it's obviously beneficial in certain. I don't think there's one answer. This is the thing about it. It'll be a number of factors. One of the biggest factors for me is the fact that there's nowhere for kids to play football. Everywhere you go, no ball games. You never see kids playing football on the street corners like you used to when I was a kid. There's the opportunity for kids to play football is less and less and less. And because the world's gone PC mad, and kids aren't allowed to play out anymore, the parents would rather them sit in the house and play on a games console because they're safe and they're free from sort of people who can cause them harm, which we never knew about, or you never knew as much about when we were kids. We were sort of allowed to go and play football in the street till all hours. But because the media are constantly showing you about all these people who will harm kids, and there's stories in the papers every day about it, you can't blame parents for wanting to keep the kids where they can see them, and keep them in the house. And unless you've got a very big back garden, it's difficult for kids to play football as much as they would like. The fact that there's going to be a lot of small things that constitute to one big thing. And I think probably playing futsal would be one of those small things. Do I think it's the answer? If every kid played it, would there be of benefit to us? I think it would help, but it wouldn't be the answer. We'd probably end up with a lot of people who couldn't do they'd be very skillful, but wouldn't have the practical abilities to be able to negate someone steaming into them to take the ball off them. Because I don't know the rules of futsal, but it's like the ball's heavier or something. You can't kick it over head height or something like that, which I think is great for player development. But as I say, I don't think it's the one answer. I think there's a number of things we could be better at, and one of the main things was, if you get more kids playing football more often, it would help. The fact that there's nowhere for them to play doesn't help, and I think grassroots football is something that needs to be looked at very carefully, because grassroots football is what props the whole of football or British football up. Without it, we're going to be struggling. So yeah, I think we need to have a look at that and support football at grassroots level. I think the more we do that, the more junior clubs we've got developing players, the better for the game as a whole. They decide they've got it completely utter wrong. I actually would argue that this EPPP nonsense that's going about now is exactly what I've just said, nonsense. I don't believe we will see a stimulus in British talent until the education system within the game's better, until we start educating players what it takes, until we start educating coaches what it takes to get them up. And the best players in the world aren't the English by abundance. So we've got a global league sitting at the top. I think the Championship's actually a really good league for English players to cut their teeth in. I think it gives them first team experience. One notable young player who sort of springs to mind is the young boy Will Hughes, who was at Derby, who I thought was I think he's 18. Cheers for the question, Carwin, all the way from New Zealand. Yeah, there's some good players. I mean, there's obviously a big discrepancy between the Championship and the Premier League. I mean, it's a lot more of a physical league, and I actually think it's a good league for young players to cut the teeth in. I mean, it's out of players. I think we're just going to be throwing eggs at a wall, trying to see which ones don't break for a long period of time. And we're starting to see that in the modern day game. I mean, we're fortunate at the minute because we're getting a few eggs sort of through. We're not getting as many as we once did, because the Premier League's now demanding that the best players in the world play in it. It's a lot better of a league than the academy. I don't really believe in the academy system. I think it's proven at this point now to have failed, and we've lost probably a generation of players. And I think I tweeted not long ago that it is the modern day equivalent of genocide. The fact that whatever these people have put in place, now that they've subsequently